There's a great book which I'll pass around and you can take a look at. It's really good. And there's one statement in it which is from the Balinese, and it says, "We have no art, we do everything as well as we can," which I've got a sign for Peter to make beautifully and hang one in every classroom, because I think that should be our motto for the art department. Don't you think that's a good motto? We have no art, we do everything as well as we can. They say, we have no art, we do everything as well as we can. See, so that you don't have art off in a little niche someplace. You have no distinction between what is art and what is not art. You do everything as well as you can.
Hi everyone, today is Monday. It is September 4th, so I'm basically filming this on Labor Day. If you guys watched my first Artist Way video, the whole introduction video, you may remember I mentioned Sister Corita Kent in the introduction during my whole spiel about religion and art history. If you guys don't know who Sister Corita Kent is, she was a pop artist specializing in very type-forward screen prints that were full of life and bursting with color. She was also a nun and an educator at the Immaculate Heart College art department in LA. I see her as a great designer and educator, and I personally look up to her a lot for inspiration. I also just love her approach to teaching art and creativity, and I personally wanted to bring her ideals and philosophies into week 4 of the Artist Way. And I personally want to break down the quote, "We have no art, we do everything as well as we can." And I know it's a very contradictory sounding quote, but there's something cooking in there. So as Sister Corita Kent mentioned in the documentary footage that I included in the beginning of this video, the saying comes from the Balinese being the Bali people of Indonesia. And I believe this means that in the local language or culture of Bali, there is no word that directly translates to the word art as it does in English or other languages. There is no word in Balinese language or culture that directly translates to art because it's everywhere and it's just a given. We do everything as beautifully and as well as we can because that's just a part of our world. There are no museums or galleries to display art in its own niche. Art is everywhere, and it's just something that we do in our everyday life. So art is everywhere, and yet it's nowhere, so therefore we have no art. At least that's how I interpret it. Now that I am on week 4 of the Artist Way, there's actually a quote from this week's reading that personally to me reminded me of Sister Corita Kent. "People frequently believe the creative life is grounded in fantasy. The more difficult truth is that creativity is grounded in reality, in the particular, the focus, the well-observed or specifically imagined. As we lose our vagueness about ourselves, our values, our life situation, we become available to the moment. It is there, in the particular, that we contact the creative self." I think Sister Corita Kent was the kind of artist who was very particular about what she wanted from her students and what she wanted from her art. And I see the viewfinder activity that Corita Kent is most commonly known for to be very much grounded in reality. You know, you're really just seeing the world as it is, and you're seeing through that viewfinder, that little square hole, to kind of crop things out and just, again, really see things for the way they are. And because this week involves reading deprivation and you're trying to avoid like getting lost in people's words and stories, I think a good way to combat this is to just make things and observe things in the way that, again, Corita Kent intended for her students to do and for herself to do. So for this week, I'm not going to focus so much on the tasks as I did in past videos, but more so on how I'm going to approach this week utilizing Corita Kent's ideals, her projects, her ideas and attitudes towards art and life, and try to incorporate it into this week. But yeah, for this week, I'm not going to be documenting so much of the tasks that are in this book, but more so just being aware of my environment and taking the opportunity to create things and make things when I can. So yeah, that's the plan for this week. Happy Wednesday, everyone! For this section of the video, I wanted to share a project with you that involves potatoes. I know it's a little weird, but trust me on this one. If you run out of ideas for artist dates, I highly recommend doing this mini project. I got this assignment from the Corita Art Center, which is a non-profit organization dedicated to preserving Corita Kent's art and legacy. One of the ways they do this is by sharing free downloads of coloring pages and worksheets of fun assignments you can do. I'll provide a link to this worksheet specifically, along with a link to another activity I'll share at the end of this video. I chose the potato print project because I think it's very accessible. I'm pretty sure you can find all the supplies you need just by looking around your house and your kitchen. Like, I don't even have regular white potatoes in my house, so I opted for purple yam and it worked just fine. You're essentially cutting a shape into the flat surface of the potato to make a stamp out of it. Here I used the Corita heart provided by the worksheet, but you can choose any shape you want. I punctured holes around the shape with a paper clip and cut out the exterior using an X-Acto knife, which is probably more dangerous than a paring knife, so don't follow my example. I nearly cut my fingers off. But anyways, I think it's a very accessible project and you don't need any fancy art supplies or tools. You can take whatever paint or ink you have lying around to stamp it on a t-shirt, or in my case, a tote bag. The whole purpose of this project is to show that anyone can do art, anyone can create, and it's not something that only gifted or rich or quote-unquote creative people are able to do. It really is from the little things and from the mundane that art is made. Even if you think you're bad or mediocre or can't make an award-winning piece, it doesn't matter. What's important is that you did it. You made something. I even get in on my own head about the things I've made that are bad, and I have to remind myself that sucking at something is the first step to being sorta good at something. So let yourself be an artist, and let yourself be bad at it, because again, we have no art. It's just a part of everyday life.
To see some of the people in her class going around with these square pieces of paper, with this little hole. And I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm doing my homework." And Corita said, you have to look at the world, small pieces at a time. Look at just a small part of the world.
I think that was all part of her work ethic, to just keep people looking, because first time we look at things, we don't see things. I think that's one of the things she tried to teach her students and future teachers, is to really look and to really see things. That's a great gift, to teach people how to see, to really see, to look, to see.
ABC.